attending the Midtown Ventura Community Council meeting for July 8, 2021. We recommend that you keep your mics off. You're welcome to keep your camera on, but if you turn off your mic, it'll help it make it easier for for people to listen. So, like I said before, my name is Gregg Mansfield. I'm the chair of the Ventura Community Council, and joining us on this Zoom session, hopefully our fellow board members might be able to wave. We've got Eric Burke, Dan Long, Sri Egbert, Pamela Hazard, Karen Flock, and Christine Berg. So they're with us, or they'll be joining us, but they are part of our board. So also, I want to recognize some familiar faces tonight and a lot of new attendees, which is great to see. If you're not familiar with our program, we treat guests with dignity and respect, regardless of differing viewpoints. After the speaker is presented, everyone will have an opportunity to ask questions. You can submit your questions via the chat, and we'll read it to the panelists. We found this method works best and keeps us from going late into the night. So first off, tonight's meeting starts with the spotlight on nonprofits. Some of you might recognize tonight's presenter for Good Jobs First, Arleen Martinez. Arleen was previously a reporter for the Ventura County Star and covered Ventura City Hall, along with numerous other beats for the company. Now the Midtown resident is the communications director for Good Jobs First, which is a national policy resource to promote corporate and government accountability in economic development. In short, they shine a spotlight on the tax dollars given away to big corporations. It's probably fair to say Amazon isn't going to send them a Christmas card anytime soon. So we asked Arleen to talk about what they do and if there's any situations locally that we as citizens should be on the lookout for. So Arleen, I know you're there, so if you could please take it away, appreciate it.
Hi, thanks, Greg. This is Arleen Martinez with Good Jobs First. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, I see a lot of familiar faces on here, which is great, including Chief Salinas, who I used to see at Port Hueneme City Council meetings. So, well, good to see everyone. Good Jobs First is Greg. Thanks for that intro. We do focus on one of our main focuses is equitable economic development. So what does that look like? And specifically, we've focused for 23 years now almost on subsidies. So that when a government gives away tax dollars for development, making sure that we know how much money is going to what company. You'll be surprised how difficult that information is to find out sometimes. And California is not that great about being really open and transparent about sometimes what companies are getting what money, and then what do communities get in exchange for them, right? So there's typically these agreements that are, or there should be these agreements when you get tax money, free money, public money. It's either a jobs commitment or an infrastructure or a combination of both, or a combination of a lot of different things. One of the things that our organization does is focus on best practices. So what do those agreements look like and what's in them? Like, for example, you want to make sure there's a clawback agreement so that if a company doesn't do what it said it was going to do in terms of number of jobs and wages, then they should have to pay the money back. Or what we like even better is that they don't get the money until they deliver those things. So there's a number of ways that governments structure these agreements, but or they don't structure them at all, which isn't a good idea, because you want to make sure there's something holding these companies accountable. That's why transparency has been a big part of the organization's work, is making sure that now most states have something online that you can look at, but in terms of how much money they've given or what they've got in return, but that's not always the case. We've done a lot of work specifically with Amazon, looking at Amazon because it's gotten over $4 billion in public subsidies across the country. So we've tracked every single one of those subsidies, and those are just what we can find. So you've got a very profitable company still getting a significant amount of money. So looking at it for the, there's a lot of development projects going on here in Ventura. Now Ventura, and I see Jeff's here, but Ventura was very conservative when it came to redevelopment. So redevelopment was California's big subsidy program. Yeah, it was one of the biggest subsidy programs in the state until they got rid of them in effective 2012. Because I was coming back to the state from Pennsylvania. One of the things that struck me when I moved to Ventura from Pennsylvania was how Ventura didn't seem to as often, and it was also slow growth at the time. It still is, but I mean, it was kind of slow in terms of recovering from the recession.
Because of recordings?
And one of the things that I noticed here compared to Pennsylvania was there were fewer what now I refer to as community benefits agreements. So in Pennsylvania, it seemed like a lot of the developments I covered, the groups would really push for a lot of strings on these developments, whatever the case may be, whether it was for park space, as you might imagine, or some type of community investment. So that's I'm going to put a publication here into the chat that's from 2005 that we wrote that goes into more detail, since I only have a minute or two left here, about community benefits agreements. But there are just some suggestions for when a project comes into town. I know Gregg mentioned that maybe, as the Pacific View Mall goes through a potential redevelopment, or some other big project comes into town, or the trade desk. I know that as the city looks at growing the trade desk, or any other major company that they're touting that they want to come in, there should be an exchange so it should be both sides getting something, right? So companies shouldn't just win, but so should community groups. So we suggest, like, for example, make sure that wages are good paying jobs, that there's real estate tax-based impact fees, or retail reuse adaptation fees, or just making sure that people who are hired to do these jobs are paid well and they're local. So workforce reinvestment is a big thing that we really push. It's actually it's one of the main subsidies we really promote as a good use of tax dollars, or these community reinvestment dollars for workforce training, because they're pretty successful. And then you get community members who really need to be lifted up. You're putting the money where it needs to go. So I don't know, that's sort of a quick and dirty.
Well, thank you, Arleen. Let's, if anybody has any questions, please drop them in the chat right now. I think let me just throw off, I'll take the chair prerogative on this one. Obviously, we're former newspaper alums, and God bless us for that. How much do you rely on local media to help build out your database? I mean, and with that vanishing, how does that hurt you to be able to track these subsidies?
Yeah, Gregg, thanks. That's a great question. We rely heavily on local media news coverage to find out about these subsidies. I was talking about, again, these problems with transparency, with just not reporting them out or not telling the value. We've had a lot of newspapers have sued just to find the dollar value, especially with the Amazon HQ2 battles. We were having newspapers suing just to find out the value. Oxnard, I would say, provided me that information right away. Oxnard, you might remember, put in for an HQ2 bid. They sent me their offer within, I think, 2 days. So good on Oxnard. And but yes, very heavily. So because we can't, there's no way to know either at a state level or national level how much subsidies are really being given away. So all we can do is track sort of state by state, and we rely heavily on media coverage for that, which is shrinking. So we know we're capturing probably less and less of those dollars. And I'll put in our subsidy tracker in the chat after here. Our subsidy tracker has more than 1,000, has tens of thousands of companies, how much money they've gotten in subsidies, and what the agreement calls for. And there's just not as much in California, because California is not that good at reporting them out.
But it's fair to say we give them out, we just don't report it, is what you're saying?
Yes, in particular, we're very generous with, for example, film and tax subsidies, which are shown to not be very successful anyway. We also give a lot of research grants. And in fact, there was some legislation last year that we wrote a letter in support of, to try to get, all it was to make a company put all the subsidies they were getting together. So all the tax breaks would have been incorporated in one place rather than having to go to all the different agencies. And that passed through the legislature, and then Newsom vetoed it. So we're hopefully that'll come up again.
Well, I think you bought everybody. I don't see any questions right now currently in the chat. So we will, Arleen, thanks so much for coming and joining us, and congratulations on your, well, not new old job that you have. And I think it's very important to obviously see where these dollars are going and how they're spent. So thank you, Arleen.
Great, thanks for having me. I'm going to put that subsidy tracker link in the chat.
Great. Actually, you know what? We do have one. I'm sorry, a late minute. I heard Trade is coming here to open a branch in Ventura. I don't know if Arleen would know that or not.
I don't. I would think Jeff might know that better than I, but
He might, but I don't want to put Jeff on the spot on that one. So okay. So Arleen, thanks so much. It's nice seeing you. So, okay, so perfect. So next coming up, we have last year, the city of Ventura overwhelmingly approved a ballot measure for taxation of cannabis, which has paved the way to allow for commercial cannabis businesses within the city of Ventura. Approved up to 5 commercial cannabis storefronts in the city and have provided a map of where the dispensaries can operate. And I'll get that map into the chat so people can see it. So the first application for permits is open and will go until August 11th. Our community council has been approached by several applicants doing community outreach, so we thought it would be a good time to look at dispensaries, how they operate, and what the community should demand from the businesses. As a note, our board is not in a position for or against commercial cannabis businesses. Tonight's presentation is just an opportunity to look at dispensaries and what to expect. And so Ventura will be the 3rd or 4th city, if I realize that, depending on who you ask, in the county to offer legal sales. So Port Hueneme is first in the county to open stores in January 2018. That's why we asked Port Hueneme Police Chief Andrew Salinas to talk about what the city is doing right and how he's working with the cannabis community. I want to thank Chief Salinas for joining us tonight. He's speaking from Orlando, where he's attending an FBI conference and late into the evening. So hopefully he's there. So if you can take it away, please do.
I am here, but it shows that my bandwidth is unstable. I want to make sure that you can hear me clearly.
Yep, we can, very much so.
Okay, great. All right, so let me bring up my presentation. My goal is to have this done in less than 15 minutes so we can entertain as many questions as possible. So I will be attempting to speed through this.
Okay, let me, what I'll do is let me go through and share the screen with you. Okay, why aren't you popping up? Sorry, folks. I've been off a month or 2 on this, and so I'm having to learn it. So, okay, so let me go share screen.
The easiest way to do it is probably to make me a co-host, if you can.
Yeah, I'm going to make you a host right now. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then please at the end give it back to me so we don't kill the meeting. Okay, let's go. So thanks. So take it away, please. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me get this up now. So do you see? Okay, so do you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Okay, so all right. So the first thing I want to start out with is explaining everyone on the neighborhood council that as a police chief, I am not pro-cannabis. I am pro-regulation. I am pro-compliance. I am pro-getting this right. And so that's what we attempted to do in the city of Port Hueneme, and it has fared very positively for us, especially the community. And so I'm here to provide everyone with a presentation on how Port Hueneme cannabis has grown over the last 3 years. Our first dispensary actually opened up in January of 2018. So I have 3 years of data and experience having addressed everyone's issues. And we knew that the county as well as the state were going to be looking at us as one of the first cities to really get going with medicinal and adult use cannabis. And so again, we wanted to get this right. And so my purpose today is to make sure that everyone on the council makes an informed decision, because there's so much misinformation out there. We want to make sure that you make a decision with all the information before you. So that's why I did not hesitate to actually jump on this call, even though I'm in Florida, because I wanted you to have all the information available to you, especially from an adjacent local city. So with that, I'll get started. Let's see if this works here. It should. Okay, so really quick, just so you have our statistics, the city of Port Hueneme is about 24,000 residents. As you know, we're a county city that's completely encapsulated by the city of Oxnard. One of the main reasons we got into cannabis was as a revenue source. We have a lot of challenges in our city because we are landlocked. We have no empty plots in our city to actually expand, as we are completely encapsulated by the city of Oxnard. And we are the only city in the county that doesn't have a major freeway running through it or any of the big box brand stores. And so we needed to find a revenue source. As I stated earlier, the city of Port Hueneme adopted an ordinance in 2017 and later amended it to include recreational use in January of 2018. And by late January of 2018, we opened up our first retail dispensary. When we first started this, we wanted to make sure that we took the leadership position and we created a framework that protected our community. Our goal was to create a cannabis licensing program that would be the model for everyone by actually screening each application very carefully, combined with the input of our community through our conditional use permit process and through our law enforcement initiatives. And we also started something here that was very unique in the state, and that's a community contribution program. You'll hear about it later, but the cities of Oxnard have actually adopted this concept, and that's 1% of all gross sales get reinvested back into the community from our cannabis dispensaries. So many people think that anyone can just open up a cannabis dispensary, and that is the farthest thing from the truth. These are just a couple of applications here, 3 to be exact. They number anywhere from 200 to 500 pages long. And you see the 14 items here that are listed. These are all the different items that each potential dispensary owner has to address in their cannabis application. It's not for the faint of heart. It is very detailed and very extensive. And the process, even when submitting a good application, takes well over a year to get going. And they must address all of these, which include neighborhood compatibility and community benefits. And they have to show that they can run a business and have experience when it comes to cannabis. When I say it's not for the faint of heart, just to get started in terms of licensing permits in the city of Port Hueneme totals $30,000. That's before you even start your building upgrades and your building revisions, as well as even getting any of your product in. So you have to be well funded to get any of these types of operations off the ground. I'm going to have a couple myths in this presentation. The first one is some people think that these are what dispensaries actually look like in their communities, and that could be furthest from the truth. The dispensaries in our city actually look like this. We require them to blend in with their shopping center or their surroundings. And this is Safe Port here. This is what they look like from the outside. We typically restrict, you see large green crosses or a green background or things of that nature that advertise. And we don't allow that here in the city of Port Hueneme. This is what Safe Port actually looks on the inside, very clean, very hospitable, very welcoming. Here's the outside of HPC, one of our other dispensaries. And here's the inside of one of our other dispensaries known as Wheelhouse. So again, they have a brand to sell, and so they try and make their location as inviting as possible. So I typically say that myth is busted. So where's the city of Port Hueneme right now? We actually have 9 approved retail licenses in the city, with a majority of them, all but one, on this stretch eloquently known as the Green Mile. And that's on Channel Islands Boulevard between Ventura Road and Wheelhouse. These are the logos of the 8 dispensaries that have been approved. There's ones that's missing because they've been approved and I don't have their logo. And so we do have them, a majority of them along this stretch. As you can see, they actually back up to residential neighborhoods. And I'll go into that a little bit later on. And then the one that's missing, Emerald Perspective, they are actually located in the middle of a residential neighborhood, all 3 of their sides. And the 4th side is actually adjacent to the naval base. And as you can imagine, there was a complete uproar when that application was submitted That location used to be a bar. And since then, we've had 0 complaints. And in fact, we have fewer calls for service at this location than when it was a bar. We really don't respond to this location for any reason, as opposed to previous owners where it was a bar. We were at least responding to this location twice a week. So this is what it looks like in terms of our entire city, with 11 retail applications and businesses. The blue represents delivery locations, which are commonly referred to as non-storefront locations. And then the MND stands for manufacturing and delivery. Manufacturing and distribution, excuse me. And that's what you see at the bottom right of our location. So we do have a lot of experience with this up until this point. So what the city of Port Hueneme did, very unique to what other cities have done, is we entered into development agreements with these dispensaries. And that allowed us to put these special conditions on their permit. And if they violate any of these conditions, we are allowed to remove that permit and actually close their business. I myself included 50 different recommendations in their permit process. And here are some of the ones that I'd like to point out real quick. They're not allowed to have any after-hour gatherings or social functions at these locations without a city permit. All of their employees must wear uniforms. This allows the police officers responding to the dispensary for any type of critical incident to be able to delineate between the employees and actual customers on location. And we require that they have a high-definition video security system, which is accessible by myself as well as our dispatch center at all times. And if at any point this security system goes down, the business must shut down. If there's an odor that persists in the location, they have 24 hours to remedy the situation, or the business gets shut down. They have to have no loitering or soliciting signs. If there's a power outage, they must close the facility because their alarm systems and their security systems aren't aligned. And something that's very unique too is that we require all employees to get live scan and undergo a background investigation. And no employee is allowed to work at any of these locations without the approval of the chief of police. So myth number 2, most people think that this is what cannabis dispensary employees look like. And again, that couldn't be further from the truth. Here are some pictures of what some of our cannabis employees look like in the city of Port Hueneme. Young, clean-cut employees. Again, these dispensaries have an image, they have a brand to sell, and so it is not what people typically think. People typically think that dispensaries hire people of questionable character, and they have customers of questionable character, and that couldn't, again, be further from the truth. Here in the picture in the middle, you actually have a 90-year-old female there with her caretaker who's there to get some medicinal cannabis and is being helped by our young employee here. Majority of the customers we have found are actually professionals, lawyers, doctors, nurses, teachers, people from all walks of life. So that myth is busted. I talked about all employees must get live scanned. All employees have to go through the background check. They get live scanned, they get photographed by the police department, and we charge $410 for that service to recover all of our fees for this process. And thus far, we have live scanned over 400 employees and brought in a total revenue of approximately $164,000 during that time. We talked about backgrounds. The BCC, which is the Bureau of Cannabis Control, allows us to disqualify owners as well as employees who have a questionable background. And some of these are automatic disqualifications, such as violent felonies, serious felonies, fraud or embezzlement convictions. And as you can see there on the bottom, it actually allows us to take the totality of their criminal background as well. And so this has been very successful in limiting their turnover, as well as having any type of internal issues at their locations. And thus far, we've probably disqualified upwards of 20 people or 5% of the 400 applications that have come before us. Something we do unique here in Port Hueneme too is we are the ones that actually issue the badges or identifications to all the employees once they pass a background. This prevents the dispensaries from fraudulently creating their own identification cards. And so when our officers go inside the dispensary to conduct random audits or inspections, they can actually check each employee to verify that they have gone through the background process and have one of the official identification cards presented by the police department. Okay, so our next slide here. Let's see, I'm getting locked up. Try this. Okay. Something I missed in this slide right here, the graph isn't showing up, but one of the requirements we have in our conditional permitting process is that we require all dispensaries to solicit employees from our city before soliciting employees from other cities. That has been very successful and has created quite a few jobs for the city of Port Hueneme. We currently have in excess of 50 employees that actually live in the city of Ventura.
Chief Salinas, I'm sorry to interrupt you for a second. We got
Sure.
people waiting to come in. Can you hit and let everybody into the meeting?
I just hit the admit all button.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right.
I appreciate your Zoom skills. They're strong.
You got it. So this kind of gives you a quick little outlook on revenue. I get that question asked a lot. How much are these dispensaries bringing in? So I started it from July of 2018 when we had 3 dispensaries open. And as you've seen, we've graduated. The more dispensaries we've opened up, it's brought in more revenue. It hasn't plateaued yet. I don't see this plateauing for quite some time, being that this is going to become a normal thing in people's lives, just like liquor stores. And so as time goes on, more people are going to become acclimated to this, and there's going to be just as much business for us as there is for any of the other cities. So thus far, we are averaging about $5 million a year in gross revenue. $5 million a month in gross revenue. That's $60 million a year. Through our development agreement, that's 5%, which equates to $3 million, plus the sales tax we receive are part of the sales tax, so that equates to approximately $4.5 million that the city of Port Hueneme is bringing in cannabis revenue, which is nearly 20% of our general fund revenue. Some people think that this is a young people's choice cannabis, and we have all the customer age demographics. And as you can see by this chart here, over 40% of all the customers that visit Port Hueneme are over the age of 40 years. And so this isn't just a young person's thing. As you can see here by the older lady, I showed this picture earlier, she's 90 years old and she's there to pick up her medicine with her caretaker. So by the numbers, according to our customer demographics, 19% of all of our customers are coming from the city of Ventura. In the city of Port Hueneme, right now, our cannabis dispensaries are attracting 66,000 customers every month. So you can do the math. That's over 750,000 people every year that are coming to Port Hueneme to purchase cannabis. To bring more clarity to that, we are 24,000 residents. That's nearly 3 times as many residents that are in our city that come to our city every month to purchase cannabis. As you can see here by California, 13% of our customers actually come from out of state. So this is a tourist thing, becomes a destination thing, and we have the demographics to actually prove that. And I'll show you a map here. This is the actual pin map of where all our customers are coming from. Some people are asking, well, how do we know this? Because everyone that visits a dispensary has to show their identification card. They have to show a legal identification card. And so they have to, the dispensaries have to track this information because you're not allowed to purchase more than 1 ounce of cannabis every day. So they have to keep track of this in their system. And then with that, they keep track of names, date of birth, and addresses. And so that's how we're able to acquire all of this information. Okay, and I'm locked up here again. Give me a second. Okay, so I talked about the 1% in terms of community contributions. This chart I created was earlier this year. So far, we've pretty much hit the $1 million mark because 5 of our dispensaries donated $10,000, over $10,000 for our Hueneme Beach Festival. That's in August. And they recently most of them made 5-year pledges to our Boys and Girls Club, which totaled $500,000. And so the list on the right there shows all of the different locations and nonprofit entities that they have donated to. Some of you may have read the article in the VC Star about our dispensaries donating over 100 beds to the homeless shelter, as well as saving the fireworks show in 2019. They donate to the drag club, the drag program, the Seroptimus Club, our explorers. I mean, the list goes on there. During COVID, we were able to create movies at the beach with a giant 50-foot screen because all of our dispensaries donated money for that, so we could buy an outdoor projector and actually have some sort of event for our community, even though they couldn't be outside. So we were able to create a drive-in outdoor movie theater for them. And that was thanks to our cannabis dispensaries. So when we total all the community benefits, we talked about the cannabis tax there, which accounts for $2.5 million in 2020, over $500,000 in donations. Those are the pledges to the Boys and Girls Club in 2020. And it's created over 240 jobs so far at an $18 an hour average salary, which equates to $38,000 a year. And this is just a breakdown of that chart. Over the last 3 years, it's brought in almost $100 million in gross revenue. And you can see how much the city there has received, which is nearly $5 million and nearly $1 million in community contributions. People want to know about crime. So here it is. I took this screenshot at a previous presentation. I now take screenshots every time I do this, so they don't think I'm just picking and choosing. This was a week before a previous presentation back in June of last year. And there's our Green Mile where all those dispensaries are located. There is no crime in this area. Why? Because they have armed security guards. They have exterior and interior video camera surveillance equipment, and no criminal, no transient, no homeless person wants to be in and around that. So here's May 21st to June 17th, almost an entire month. Again, no criminal activity in that area. And so just so you don't think I'm playing with the statistics, today I decided to pull today's date. You can find this on crimemapping.com if you'd like to go to it, from July 1st to today's date. Again, there's the Green Mile. There is no crime in that area. We did have a homicide, that's the H down on the bottom there. 2 days ago, we had a shooting, but again, we've had no shootings or robberies or assault with a deadly weapons in and about or around any of our dispensaries. So I'd like to say that myth is busted. Even more so, we've had a 26% decline in violent crime in our city since we opened up our dispensaries. I didn't update this slide. It's about 3 months old. We've had 2 homicides, our first 2 homicides in over 3 years. One was a drunk driver that plowed down a group of bicyclists, and the one that we had a few days ago, which was a personal confrontation between 2 individuals that was unrelated to any of our dispensaries. And we've had a 1% overall decrease in property crimes. People want to know about school impacts. We don't have any high schools or junior highs in the city of Port Hueneme, although they do border our city, Hueneme High School, as well as E.O. Green. The small little school buildings you see on here, these are elementary schools, and these are actually located in our city. The one in our left, top left there is part of the Hueneme School District, but it is not in the city of Port Hueneme. When I reached out to the superintendent, this is what she replied to me in an email. Overall, there has been no increase at the elementary schools, although we just did have our first incident, at least in the last 5 years, of possession at Hollywood Beach School. There have not been any incidences at the 4 elementary schools in Hueneme. I bring this up because I require all dispensaries to have all the laws related to cannabis either written on a receipt, on the walls in the dispensary, or on their website. And so all of their patrons and customers know that when they visit a dispensary, these are the rules that pertain to cannabis to help limit the illegal use out in public. And so quite frankly, you are not allowed to use cannabis except in the privacy of your own home. Best practices, almost done here. Some of the unique things that we do in Port Hueneme is that through the development agreements, your license does not automatically get renewed. We have annual inspections and audits that the cannabis dispensaries pay for, and your license is only renewed if you pass these inspections. We actually do responsible cannabis server certification here. First in the state. Just like alcohol, we require you, all employees, to go through a 4-hour training course on cannabis so they are aware of the rules and how to safely dispense cannabis. And we had to suspend that in 2020 due to COVID, but that's part of the $410 fee they pay for each employee, and that has been very successful. We have community cannabis educational forums where we've invited the entire community to come in and actually see how cannabis is doing in our city.
No Cruise, my next movie, and I really appreciate you guys experiencing it firsthand. It really makes the commercial more authentic.
Someone needs to mute. All right, there we go. Okay.
Really look
We talked about security recommendations.
We're in a commercial? Oh, you still are?
F6, please turn off your mic.
There we go. All right, thank you. And so we talked about the security recommendations, and you do that through your development agreements. We have deposit meetings with our owners. Every time they come in and make a cash deposit on a monthly basis, myself and the community development director meets with them to make sure that there's this open line of communication and that we are adhering to all the rules and addressing any of their needs. We talked about the community contribution program of 1% gross sales back into the community. We live scan all employees, not just owners, and we talked about the identification card program. We also do annual undercover minor decoy operations where we've tried to infiltrate all of our retail locations with some of our explorers, and we have yet to actually penetrate that front door due to the security guard out front. We have mandatory manager meetings twice a year. We've implemented a marijuana cannabis social ordinance here, very similar to cities do this, very similar to fireworks or alcohol or controlled substances. We actually added cannabis onto this, so it helps prevent any parents or young groups from actually hosting these cannabis parties. And we mandate literature in all of our retail stores, and as you can see here on the right, these are literature pamphlets that we've joined forces with Ventura County Public Health, as well as the Office of Traffic Safety, and we require these literatures to actually be in the retail locations for all of the customers, and they touch on driving under the influence of cannabis, as well as keeping cannabis out of the reach of your children and pets. And just, I'll get this question a lot. Have you had an increase in impaired drivers in your city? And we have not. We have yet to have a single, what we call DUID, driving under the influence of drugs, for cannabis since we opened up any of our dispensaries. But we've had 18 drunk driving traffic collisions in our city during that same time. So with that, that concludes my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than willing to entertain them, or we can wait till the end of the meeting.
You know, if you don't mind, we're going to wait till we have a couple other presenters. Chief Salinas, if that's okay with you. I know you're running late back there, but
that's fine.
Try to make it quick.
That works for me.
And that's perfect. People, everybody, put your questions, please put them in the chat. We will get to them. So Megan, you're up next on this one. So Andrew, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. And as I say, we got a couple more speakers, and then we'll let everybody start answering the questions. So next up, we have Megan Souza, who is the co-founder and CEO of Megan's Organic Market. We are seeking a cannabis license for Ventura, but not within the Midtown district, which is key. Just to let everybody know, Eric Berg, our vice chair, we met with her a couple weeks ago in regards to this. And so we asked her to give us some insight of what it's like to run a commercial cannabis business and growing operation. And we also want to know what it's like, what people can expect and what they should get from cannabis businesses to be good corporate citizens. So please take it away, Megan.
All right, thank you, Greg, for the introduction. Yes, I'm Megan Souza of Megan's Organic Market Dispensary, and we are a 100% women-owned dispensary, which is very rare in the cannabis industry. And we have a little short video to share, and then I have my Chief Operating Officer, Nick, in the meeting as well, who will give a little presentation. I'll let you take it away, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, everyone, for having us tonight. Greg, if you could allow me to share my screen, I can bring up what Megan's referring to.
You're muted. You're muted, Greg.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here you go. I'm making the host. Just make sure at the end don't crush us.
All right, perfect. Can everyone see my screen? All right, awesome. Well, yeah, we have a short little presentation for you today. Basically, Megan's Organic Market actually began in 2010 as a medical cannabis cultivator and delivery service with the mission of making cannabis wholesome. And so today we have three parts of our company. The first is a storefront retail, where we operate the city of San Luis Obispo's first cannabis storefront with additional retail licenses in Santa Barbara County and Tracy, as well as 5 additional retail projects in various stages of development throughout California. We also have cultivation, which is about 14 acres of cannabis cultivation in San Luis Obispo County, and 3 different cannabis brand lines. And as Megan mentioned, 100% women-owned company. We have a short little video here that will kind of give you an overview about us, and we'll get into a little bit more depth after that.
My mom is the hardest working, most inspiring woman, as is my grandmother. They both had retail stores in San Luis Obispo County. I'd never really imagined another way of being in the world besides being an entrepreneur. When I met my partner, Eric, we decided that we would start a business together. So we got involved in cannabis. We started in cultivation. Our brand aesthetic was wholesomeness and responsible stewardship. It's our home. We grew up here. I couldn't imagine having a business anywhere else. When we started out our business, we expected college students to be our main clientele for our delivery service, but that was not the case. It was actually seniors and terminally ill folk. The experience that we're going for in our San Luis Obispo dispensary is just a normal shopping experience. We're trying to normalize the cannabis retail experience. So it's just a regular store. You just walk in, you pick up a shopping basket, you go around and check out the product, put what you want in your basket, and then you walk up to the cashier. So I tried to create a retail shopping experience that I would want to shop at, and I think that we achieved it. We committed to being carbon neutral, so we will generate all of the electricity that we consume. We are committed to donating at least $2,000 a month toward organizations or efforts that benefit the residents of the city of SLO. I've seen a lot of people be able to heal themselves and change their lives with cannabis.
All right, so that was a little short video to kind of explain a little bit about our company. As you can see in the video, we have a unique and wholesome approach to cannabis retail. Much different than the traditional storefronts where things are behind glass and it's a little bit more clinical. This, we're trying to normalize cannabis and make it a normal retail experience. We haven't seen any of the problems at all that people fear with cannabis coming in. And thank you to Chief Salinas for explaining all the stuff that's going on down in Port Hueneme. Very similar stuff happening here in San Luis Obispo and other jurisdictions in the neighboring areas. Because of this welcoming and unique experience that we have, people who are dressed in professional uniforms, white button downs that you saw in the video, our San Luis Obispo storefront is actually in the top 10% of retail storefronts by revenue in the state of California. And as we mentioned previously, we have some additional ones coming down the pipeline and hope to open in Ventura as well. In our store, we carry some unique brand lines and that are internal to Megan's Organic Market, which we also call MOM as an acronym. And one of them is So High, named after the South Higuera High Street District in San Luis Obispo. And as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, we have very unique internal displays, product displays that are developed by our talented visual merchandiser that we have within our company, as well as our Void product, which is a little bit more space agey kind of feel to it. You can see the displays there. So very high end, very professional displays that you'll find in cannabis dispensaries, really top end retail, the opposite of what many people think when they think of cannabis dispensaries. We actually were really proud to win 4 Best of Slow New Times Awards. I think the only company ever to win 4 awards in 1 year with the New Times. Best dispensary, best bud tender, best place to buy CBD, and best new business across all industries in 2020. So it really just speaks to the type of business that we're running and also the community work that we're doing. So to kind of talk a little bit about what to expect for a retail operation, maybe get into slightly more detail than Chief Salinas got into, is from a floor plan situation, like people come into a lobby, which you'll see down the bottom. They come into a secure lobby where their ID is checked by a security guard or a receptionist, and that verifies that people are not entering the premise without being of proper age. Within the dispensary, everything is fully cameraed, live feeds to the police department. Same thing in Port Hueneme exists everywhere, especially here in SLO. We also have completely limited access areas where delivery of product happens. This isn't required by the state regulations, but it's something that our company institutes because we feel like we want to go above and beyond what is required, and is actually we see as a weak point in the security of a dispensary. So as you can see at the top over here, we have a limited access delivery bay where a truck pulls in, doors shut, and roll down, bollards go up, then cannabis is exchanged, brought into a limited access inventory intake room where it's processed, and then brought into a secure vault. These vaults typically have steel reinforced walls, really, really hard to get into. You know, by the time somebody tries to break into a dispensary, if they ever were going to try to, there is very little chance they'd make it inside a vault to access where the product is before there's a police response. So even in the worst case of break-in situations, there likely would be no actual theft in those scenarios. So you can see how, you know, we've got break rooms, restrooms, all kinds of stuff here. It's a very professional layout. Security is always thought through. There's panic buttons all over the place. So if something were to happen, somebody could press a panic button. It discreetly contacts the police. Separate training rooms, because obviously training is super, super important. Separate limited access IT and security rooms where all the IT and security equipment is held. And so really this is stuff that you're not gonna find in a traditional retail experience. And so then we also have a huge social responsibility component to our business. And Arleen spoke to a lot of this earlier. I'm glad she was a presenter today because it's a lot of the stuff that's just standard in our operations and a lot of the quality operators in cannabis. And Megan, would you like to highlight anything specific here?
Yeah, so we have a 2-mile section of highway that we've been cleaning up once a month for 6 years. We installed a mural inside of our local homeless services center where we also cook and serve dinner at least once a month. We do regular educational presentations, tours, and workshops to community members and city staff and county staff. And we have built a community orchard, a 50 fruit tree community orchard, the fruits of which go to the food bank and other local food distribution programs. And that's just a tiny bit of what we do.
Yeah, and some of our projects, or all of our projects, I should say, follow some really strict sustainability standards. So all of our projects are net zero. We install enough solar to offset the electricity that we use. We have EV chargers. And we do follow LEED certification. There's a new LEED certification program for interior remodels, and we do follow that as well. So we go above and beyond on everything, and that's what you should expect for quality operators in a city, to urge them to pick quality operators that follow procedures like this. So that's pretty much it. That's just a little brief rundown of our company. I think one thing I would just like to add to is that the quality operators in the space also now have real banking relationships. So it used to be that this was an all cash business, and that's not true anymore. There's many credit unions throughout the state that now bank with cannabis, and they have a very thorough vetting process. And their vetting process, goes above and beyond even the vetting process sometimes of certain jurisdictions or the state licensing agencies. They have their own compliance inspections, and they check the metric accounts, the state track and trace databases. And people with bank accounts and companies that are able to go through that process and gain the bank accounts are held to a really higher standard. And there's a lot of accountability there to make sure the proper taxes are being paid. So that's definitely something to look for, as well as making sure that the operators chosen do have banking relationships.
That's great. Nick, thanks so much. Megan, you got anything else to add? And so what we're going to do is we're going to encourage everybody to put the questions into the chat. We have one more panelist for this, and then what we'll do is we'll start the question round. So thank you for presenting. Appreciate it, Nick and Megan, on this one. So our next one that we have coming up is rounding up the panel tonight is the group BRITE of Ventura County. Joining us is Helen Tosh and Roland Roberts from the organization to talk about engaging with young people in advocacy, education, and prevention around alcohol, drugs, and more. The group does important work. We want to hear about their efforts. So Helen and Roland, can you please take it away?
Thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting us here.
Thank you, Roland.
So I was asked to kind of introduce you to who we are as an organization. I'm a youth engagement specialist with BRITE. BRITE is spelled BRITE. It's actually an acronym. Stands for Building Resilience and Inclusion Through Engagement. We collaborate with Ventura County Behavioral Health, Ventura County Public Health, Ventura County Office of Education, and that enables me to work with students in middle schools, high schools, continuation schools, and teens who are actually incarcerated. BRITE is a youth development engagement, and we engage teens and young adults between the ages of 12 to 25 in advocacy and action around issues that they care about. We promote health and well-being and seek to help change social norms that encourage or accept and allow risky activities such as underage and binge drinking, impaired driving, tobacco use, prescription drugs, and marijuana abuse. Now, these serious issues are not just the concerns for a few troubled youth and their parents. They affect all of us. And it will take our community working together for things to change. We use improvisation and interactive techniques. BRITE engages discussion to explore the issues with the students and develop personal and community solutions to these issues. We don't go into the classrooms and tell them what to do. We go in and we have conversations, and we like to hear what concerns them so that we can help them make changes that they want to see in their schools and in communities. I've been asked a lot by parents, what can they do to help prevent their children from experimenting? And it really comes down to just keeping in touch with their mental well-being. Ask how they are. Talk to them. Ask them what they need. Teach them coping skills so they don't turn to drugs of any kind. Educate yourselves. Do the research. There's so much good information that we have easy access to. Know the science. Start those conversations. Do things with them. Go for a hike. Go for a bike ride. Support their interests. Get involved with what they care about. Also learn the signs that if they are using, what to look for. Are there behavioral changes? Listen to them. Are there changes in the way they dress? Did their friends change? Just stay in touch. Look for things that may be related to vaping. Look around, pick things up, inspect them, smell them. If you use edibles, you should also consider locking them up to make sure that your child doesn't get into them. It's easy to overdose with edibles in particular because they are so strong, so potent. They taste good and often come in sizes that are meant to be used in more than one sitting. So being in the classrooms with students has allowed me to start conversations with them and ask them questions directly, like, why do you think kids vape? Or why do you personally choose not to vape? And I just want to share a few things that we've heard over and over and over in the classrooms. They say things like peer pressure. They think it's cool. They want to look mature. The household that they're in and their friends are vaping. They think it's safer than cigarettes. They taste good. There's over 7,000 different flavors. Simple curiosity and self-medicating. Now, they don't actually say self-medicating, but what they do say is so much more shocking. They say that they use these products to help themselves deal with things like stress, depression, low self-worth or self-esteem, anxiety. They are smart enough to know that they know how it makes them feel. It relaxes them, it calms them down. And that's the dangerous part of it. Now, some of the things that we heard about why they choose not to use these products is that our educational system is working. They know the health risks. They listen, like different types of lung diseases, understanding that nicotine is highly addictive. Some of them have religious beliefs that prevent them from even experimenting. They don't want to get in trouble. And that they know that their brains are still developing. This is something that is taught in middle schools. Teen brains physically develop from the back to the front and stops developing right about 25 years old. The last part to develop is the frontal lobe, right behind the forehead here. That's the part that allows us to think things through and determine how to use information that is located elsewhere in the brain. Now, the frontal lobe controls higher levels of thinking. Now, remember, that's the last part to develop. So as a teen, that part of the brain is not fully developed. And that's the part that deals with reasoning, planning, long and short-term memory, impulse control, problem solving, emotions, judgment, and decision-making, all of which can be impaired. So marijuana use as a teen, while the brain is still developing, can prevent this development from happening in the first place. I was told I would have about 5 minutes, and I think I just used that up, so I will give it back. Thank you.
Well, Roland, if you need a couple minutes more, everybody else has gone over a couple minutes, so feel free to. If you can give you about 2 or 3 more minutes, if that works okay. I
prepared for the 5 minutes, so
okay, perfect.
There and to open it up for questions when that's
perfect. Okay, so everybody, just as I said, hit the chat now if you've got questions, comments, or anything of that sort. And what we'll do is we'll start rolling out the questions and see if we can get some answer for folks. I know that I've seen a couple commentaries in here, but we'll start off right off the bat for Chief Salinas. The first question for you: how does Port Hueneme allow storefront doctors or internet sales who specialize in just medical prescriptions to be near the dispensaries? If so, how are they inspected to be sure they prescribe to young people, especially 18 to 21, with great discernment, I guess it is, on that? So basically those kind of the storefront doctors that will write prescriptions, is that something that Port Hueneme deals with?
No, we do not. You commonly see that in locations like Las Vegas or Venice Beach. We do not allow that. And I'd say 98%, if not 99% of the customers are actually there for recreational or adult use. A majority of the customers do not have a official medicinal card because it's a pretty elaborate process to go and get one to save the 10 or 15% you actually do. So we don't see that in the city of Port Hueneme.
Great, thank you. Jen said, I really appreciate your sensible approach to the subject, and then great presentation, Chief Salinas. And then Bobby asked, what keeps someone from going to several dispensaries in one day? Chief, if you could take that, or maybe Megan or Nick, you may have to answer that one.
I can take that. So California has what's called a metrics system. It is currently not interlinked with all of the other dispensaries. So he is correct. If somebody wanted to hop from dispensary to dispensary, they could technically buy an ounce of cannabis from each one of those locations in a day. And so that is kind of a way to circumvent the system at this point.
Yeah, I'll just add too, from the retailer standpoint, at least the point of sale system that we use internally does track usage across all locations that are under our ownership. And so someone can't go from one Megan's Organic Market store to another and purchase over the limit, but we can't see what they purchase at a store that we're not affiliated with. So all we can do is have internal policies that say if that customer were to bring it up to a customer service representative, they have to block the sale. But if we don't know, at this time, unless Metric shares the data in the future, we can't see unless the customer volunteers the information.
I'll follow up on that question, Nick, or is that really an issue? I mean, do you see people going around and buying ounces at several dispensaries? I'm assuming it happens, but is it an issue?
I haven't seen it. Generally, I think the fear is that people are going to buy a lot of stuff and then turn around and sell it on the black market. But the reality is that the cost of legal market cannabis is so much higher than black market cannabis that that's not really something that makes sense.
Okay, great. Okay, so Chief Salinas, this came from Christy Weir. How many city staff hours per month does it take to permit, regulate, inspect your cannabis businesses? And then also, do any of your businesses advertise on billboards or radio or Ventura's electronic billboard?
So there are, and I have seen large billboards throughout the county that advertise the actual dispensaries. They're not allowed to advertise any type of product that's visible to the public. So you'll typically see Skunk Masters and the address, or I've seen Safeport, Animal Perspective. Actually, I've pretty much seen them all throughout. Haven't seen any in our specific city because we would not allow those types of billboards because we just don't allow billboards in general in our city, but I have seen them off of the 101 and the 33 and Harbor Boulevard. In terms of time and staff time and inspections, I do random audits and inspections. I stop by quite frequently at all of our locations. It's actually nice because they're not scared of the police. All of these locations are very welcoming of the police. In fact, they'd have us there more often if they could. They'd actually have us put up a police storefront right next to their location if we could. And so to answer the question, I'd say we spend about 2 to 3 hours a month at each location just following up on questions or inspections and things of that nature. And then our audits are conducted by a third party, HDL, so that doesn't take up much of our time when they do those annual inspections.
Yeah, and state regulatory guidelines for advertising and specifically are very strict. You have to require the advertising medium provide you with demographic data showing that at least 71.6% of the audience is 21 years of age or older. You also have to include your license number and make sure it's not attractive to children and all the basic requirements there. But there are state guidelines that prevent advertising to audiences that will have a high likelihood of reaching young folks. And there was actually a recent court ruling that said that advertising on billboards on interstate highways is no longer allowed, no matter how far you are from the border. And so advertising along the 101, at least from what I understand, is no longer permissible.
Okay, great. I'll throw this question out to you because we don't necessarily have a representative for the city of Ventura, but does Ventura have some kind of social equity program when it comes to who gets licenses? I know some people hoped Port Hueneme would do that social equity programs, recognize that communities hurt most by the war on drugs would get some of the economic wins from the industry. So, Linus, can you address that for Port Hueneme? And then maybe Nick or Megan, can you talk about that for Ventura? Because you're going through the application process. Do you know of anything of that sort?
Sure. So for Port Hueneme, we don't have a social equity, but in the application process, because we're such a small city, but we did have additional points, or we gave a greater interest to those owners that were actually from Ventura County. We did that for a number of reasons, because we knew if we got owners, especially family owners or family business owners, that they would be invested in our community, and that has actually paid dividends. 6 of the 7 locations that we currently have open are people that are actually from the county, and they're not corporations. The Tatum family, the Jarvis family, the Thuna family. I mean, the list goes on. I know Oxnard, as part of their application process, had social equity, and they were looking for certain percentages to meet that social equity formula that they had set forth.
And for Ventura specifically, the application process doesn't have any specific social equity points involved, but it does have local ownership points involved. So if you apply, you do get higher points on your application for having the business be majority owned by a local resident of Ventura.
Okay, great, thank you. So the next one's from Jen. Thank you, Megan, for being such an amazing steward for the cannabis community. Love that you're a women-owned business. Awesome business model. So, and then next one, Megan, you're up, is Megan's Flowers, Rainbows, and Sparkles. Sounds like marketing that appeals to kids. Can you talk about your concept, Megan, or defend it?
Yeah, Megan or Quinn, do you want to take that one? Okay,
Absolutely.
I can start. I think Quinn may have a broader answer on that. I think she might be muted. Quinn's our community outreach manager that's here with us today.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think we have actually, it's been an internal discussion of our branding and how we wanted to approach things early on, and have gone through multiple legal reviews of our branding. And we feel that we're doing it in a more retro standpoint that is not using cartoons or things like, you know, words that would attract children in any way. A lot of our branding is actually kept internal. So if you look at some of our external ads too, they're not necessarily some of the things that you saw in the presentation this evening. So we do tailor what we present to the audience that we're presenting to. You know, when we come into a group like this, we obviously assume everyone's over the age of 21, you know, or at least 18. So we don't feel like we're, you know, presenting to a group of families or whatever. But Quinn, I think you might have a more elaborate answer on that.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Quinn Brady. I'm the community outreach manager with Megan's Organic Market. And I appreciate this question. And I think it's something that we've talked about in the past, and really in making cannabis wholesome. We tried to aim for marketing that would bring that people in a fun way that made it approachable and unique experience that was also wholesome at the same time. And one of the things that we care a lot about is making sure that we are reaching the right audience when we are working with our products, when we're advertising in community. And so we go to great lengths to ensure that our audience is of legal age, and we certify that everywhere we advertise meets that requirement, that the audience is 21 and over. And so even though we do use some rainbows and some flowers, it's a really vintage feel, and we do everything that we can truly possible to make sure that we're advertising and that everything we're doing is reaching the right population. And even when we sponsor an event, for instance, we're making sure that the people that are attending that event are of age, by and large, that the population is over 21.
Great, thank you, Quinn, appreciate it. Kieran had a question of why weren't Hueneme or Santa Barbara's dispensaries invited about a presentation. The reason Kieran is, Megan's is actually an applicant, and we felt it was good to have an applicant actually speak about the process and also have some other stores. Bobby asks, are the negative health effects and side effects required to be written on the products like those on cigarettes and drugs? Can anybody talk about labeling requirements?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. So there's really strict labeling requirements from the state of California. I actually in the chat put a link to one of the labeling checklists that's issued by the California Department of Health. And it requires a government warning statement. And I think someone else in the chat, maybe Jen, actually put the actual government warning text in there as well. And in addition to that, there's the Prop 65 warnings that warn against cancer and birth defect potential effects of cannabis smoke. And really, if you look at those checklists, it's very exhaustive. You know, every ingredient has to be disclosed. You know, cannabis has to go through a 3-phase testing protocol. So I always tell people, like, the cannabis you're buying in a regulated licensed dispensary is actually has less pesticides on it than organic lettuce at Whole Foods. And that's actually true. There are pesticides that are approved for organic use within foods that are actually banned within cannabis cultivation in California. And so very strict labeling and very strict testing requirements. And it's one of the benefits of the legal market. You know you're getting what you're buying, and it's clean and pure and safe. And the labeling requirements are part of making that the case.
Thank you, Nick. Roland, a question for you, actually a couple. Does increased access in your dispensaries correlate with increased usage and intoxication in adults and teens?
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty a little bit with my volume. Could you repeat
Oh yeah,
that?
no problem. I'll get back to you. Does increased access nearby dispensaries correlate to increased usage and intoxication in adults and teens? And then also, if you can provide your email address, I've got it. I'll put it in the chat for you, just to let everybody know. But can you address that question in regards to increased access? Do you see increased usage?
Well, I can't speak directly to if there is a direct correlation, but what I can tell you, we do vape presentations for parents at the schools. And prior to that, I will go to the school, I will talk to the principal, AP, counselor, or even the school resource officer and ask them if they have anything that they've confiscated from the students at that school. And I have had counselors come up to me and hand me a bag, I don't know if you can see that, full of different types of vape devices. This particular bag is full of THC cartridges.
I did miss these.
Yeah.
This is a standard THC cartridge.
The
There
show.
are two pieces to it. You have what's called the cartridge, which has THC inside of it. This alone, you can't really do anything with. You need a battery. You plug in the battery, and then you push the button, and that will heat up the THC inside. I can't tell you exactly how middle school students are getting access to these, just that the fact that they are. Everything that I have bags full of these items that have been given to me so that I can demonstrate and share them with parents at those schools. A lot of parents don't understand. They don't know what these are, what they look like, how they work, or they're just in denial that their students at that school would be using it. So I get access to these, again, from school resource officers from that particular school so that I can then show the parents, this is happening. This is on campus. This is what your counselors, teachers, principals have confiscated. This is what I mean by they're self-medicating. Life is tough, and kids now have access. These cartridges, again, the THC in these cartridges could be as high as 80 to 95%. Now, when somebody smokes marijuana, on average, it's 20 to 24%. On average, it can be higher, it can be lower. So when we're talking about THC cartridges, they're extremely potent. And they have been known for chronic use, especially with teens whose brains are still developing. It can cause what's known as cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. Now, what that is, for example, some of the symptoms could be severe abdominal pain, nausea, upset stomach, or the extreme dehydration, or constant violent vomiting that can last for hours. Again, that's called cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. I was in a class one day and we do a game show. It's an educational game show. So it could be fun for them while they're learning about the risks of alcohol, THC, prescription drugs. And I was talking about cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. And one of the girls said, oh my God, I had that. I said, really? I said, what did you experience? And she told me she was vomiting for hours. She also told me that in her environment, her living environment, her home, it was totally acceptable for her to use marijuana. Her parents use it, her brothers, her sisters. So there is access.
Thank you, Roland. Okay, and a couple last questions that have popped up, and we're going to wrap this portion up. Is this one's for Megan. You were asked about state of California cannabis business plans or efforts towards reducing the harm caused by the war on drugs. Based on your plans, what efforts are being made to heal communities affected? I don't know if Megan, Quinn, or Nick, whoever wants to take it.
I'll let you take that, Quinn.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Megan. I would say we're really aware of this and having this conversation a lot. And one of the things that we're doing proactively is really trying to feature products and companies that are owned by a diverse ownership. And we also are partnering with nonprofits and organizations that operate in our community that are actively working in this area. So one of those organizations where we are is Restorative Partners, and we've been actively, Megan just did a presentation with them a couple weeks ago, both through financial contributions, looking at some volunteer opportunities, and just kind of really keeping a dialogue open between their staff and ours about how we can address this and be proactive in this area and inclusive. And so we recognize that we're in a sacred space, and that it does, we don't take that lightly, and that we talk a lot about what's come before us, and that the legalization rides on the shoulders of many. And so we try to be really thoughtful and really mindful and address this proactively through community partnerships, financial giving, and education, both for our staff and community members.
Great.
Yeah,
Well,
and thanks, Quinn.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Nick.
One other thing too is that in some of our project level entities, we do include folks who have been negatively affected by the war on drugs in project level ownership. And so it gives those folks some of the benefits of legalization as well.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions, just a few more comments that were in there. So we're actually right up on schedule. This is amazing for once. So I appreciate everybody that was part of this cannabis presentation today, for spending some time and giving up your evening to learn a little bit more. Obviously, we know the road's coming up here pretty quickly, and if everybody's, just to let everybody know behind the scenes, Ventura is going to give 3 licenses right off the bat, and there's 2 other licenses that they're holding back because they are in the coastal area, which is downtown Ventura and on the west side, which is going to require a review by the California Coastal Commission. And so that's why those 2 licenses have been kind of pushed out, and the 3 others, which would include 1 possibly in Ventura. So anyway, so thank you so much for presenting tonight and being part of it. And we're going to move on to our final topic. So thanks again. And for our final presentation tonight is from the City of Ventura about its new Safe Sidewalks Program. Funded by Measure O, the city will pay residents up to 50% of repair costs for fixing sidewalks. So we're joined by Deputy Public Works Director Mary Joyce Ivers to talk about it. I think I saw her on there, but I want to make sure she's there.
Good evening. Hello, Greg. And Greg, I have a quick PowerPoint if I can share my screen.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to give you.
All right,
give it to you. Just don't, as I say, kill us out of the meeting yet. So thank you so much. Here you go.
Yeah,
it's coming your way.
Great.
Good.
Let me find it. Okay. Start sharing and start my. So I'm going to go up. Sorry, start at the beginning. So thank you for having Public Works. Our maintaining local sidewalks this year is so important. For the past couple of years, through the Measure O funding that we've received from our residents, we've been able to reinvest that into a lot of different areas. And one of them specifically is our sidewalk maintenance program. And so this current fiscal year, that's been just July 1, we have over $1 million for several projects. And as you've probably noticed in the Midtown area around the hospitals, you've had some sidewalk work done in the past through our capital improvement program. And we've been rotating between 3 districts within our city, between the Westside, the Downtown Wellness District, which is in your area, as well as the East Side. And so this year we're going to be starting to work on the West Side since we've been in your area. So the City Council came up with a policy last year and created the Resident Initiated Sidewalk Program. And what that does, it provides $350,000 for us to cost share with our residents. So if you have a sidewalk disruption in front of your home, your property, you would put an application in with some estimates from a contractor, and we would inspect it and evaluate it and approve the program. So you could get up to $2,500 for a repair in front of your property. Currently, this year, now we have about 1,700 disruptions in the city. The green dots, as you can see on this map, have been those that we've addressed either by ramping, shaving, or do a full remove and repair. And then all the red dots and the yellow dots are ones that have been reported by citizens and residents, which we appreciate, or we have inspected and found. And so there is a lot out there, and we need to do a lot of work. And so the program we thought was to share with our residents and work together as partners to help improve the accessibility and walkability within our neighborhoods. And so how the program works is, like I said, you can get up to 50% of a reimbursement approved. If you qualify low income, such as you're in a low utility bill, it could go up to $3,750. And in some areas throughout our city, we have community development block grant funding available for the low to moderate qualifying areas as well. And so here's a little roadmap of how to get through the sidewalk program. You would research contractors. They do have to have the proper contractor's license, business license, and they do have to register with the Department of Industrial Relations because we are bound by our Public Works Contracting Code requirements. You submit your application, which you can do online or call or email. We will schedule an inspection through our Public Works inspection team. And once approved, we would give you the notice to proceed to do the work. And after the work's completed, you would submit your payment receipts. We do a final inspection, and then we would process your reimbursement. And this information is available on our website, which I put on the chat, which is our cityofventura.ca.gov, Safe Sidewalks. Or you can email us and we will respond to you at cityofventura.ca.gov. And we also have our phone numbers on the website, and I can give you as well if you need more information. And so here's an example also of the PDF application that you can download from our website, or we also have the other form too that you can fill out online and submit pictures and submit that as well. And we'll get that and then schedule a time to come look at your sidewalk disruption and determine the best application. In some cases, it might not qualify if it's less than 1/4 inch. Some people might be wanting it to look perfect, but it has to qualify for our criteria. And also a lot of our city has beautiful urban forestry and trees, and we really love our trees, but we know that the roots cause these disruptions. And so part of the inspection is with our urban forestry team, and our tree inspector will go out and look, and we will do everything we can to do root pruning, root barriers, but generally we do not want to remove the trees. So I know residents were hoping that would happen, but we really want to protect our urban forestry and really mitigate the disruption so it is safer for walking. And so I'm here for questions, and you can always contact me as well. And that's our program. And we've had a few applications, so we're really excited about this, to have the funding available to share with our residents to improve our community.
Well, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mary, please put them into the comments. There is one from Christy that's saying that the repairs in Midtown are awesome. So happy to see the quality work and successful efforts to retain the street trees. So I'll give a minute, so I'll tap here, but can you tell me, and I know Mary Joyce, there's a difference between private and the cost for public works, but roughly if it's like a 10-foot portion of sidewalk, what do you have any idea what the costs are? Or, you know, that can give people a sense of sounds like they could probably do it for a pretty affordable cost.
Yes, we did the maximum of a total cost of $5,000. It was 50% cost share up to $2,500 to the resident. That's for a full remove and replace of a 4-foot section of a sidewalk. So that's what we were basing it on with the cost for the labor and materials.
Okay, great. And then,
But some are probably less
sorry,
though.
Joyce.
Hopefully it is less. Sorry, some of it could be less like you said, but we just had to submit, we looked at our average cost and that was like the highest we had seen.
okay, yeah, and I understand there's government rates because you have to, there's certain things you have to follow, and then there's the private contractor rate, I guess, so to speak. So the other thing I wanted was, I wonder if the city ever chooses other types of sidewalks like organic materials. If you could address that question.
We have in some areas tried the rubber mat, which seems to hold up as well. So we've been evaluating that and we will continue to look at other methods. And we just recently last year found a contractor to extend the life of these sidewalks and reduce the cost for our city. And that could possibly be a method. It's a concrete slicing where they go out and slice the disruption and they make it ADA compliant. So that's been a different method that we've been using as well. So it's not demoing some of the material that needs to be recycled. So it actually extends its life and makes it safer and looks good.
Okay, and then one last question that's coming from me. How many miles of sidewalks do we have in our city? Trick question, yeah.
I know I should know this off the top of my head. I'm going to say, like 721 miles of sidewalks throughout the city.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's, I imagine just like streets, you got just as many miles, right, that you have to maintain. So,
yes.
Okay, great. So I don't see any other questions in regards to this. So Mary Joyce, thank you so much for speaking and sticking with us. It's been a long meeting tonight. So
no, it's been a great meeting. Thank you for having us.
Great, thanks. So if you can hand it back to me or send it back over to me, I'll close this out here. Thank you. So before we go, I want to share an item for residents to be aware of. The City Council will hear the appeal on the Haley project this Monday. This is the proposed project for the 72 townhomes planned for Channel Drive near Seaboard Boulevard. So if anybody's interested in that, that's going to be happening this coming Monday night. And then also from the city, the National Night Out with the Ventura Police Department will take place on August 3rd from 4 to 8 p.m. Ventura Police is encouraging people to get outdoors. To learn more on the city's website, and they'll have more information on how you can probably get a visit, a good visit from the police coming by to come by and say hello to folks. So is there anyone else have any community items of interest that you want to share with everybody before we go?
I have one, Greg.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know the Midtown Commons project is pretty much done, not completely done, but it's looking pretty good. And we're gonna let it go for about 6 months before we start maybe changing out some plants or adding things that need to be added. There is another tree that still needs to be planted. But our landscape architect said that the city did a pretty good job. And it is what it's supposed to look like. So that was good news to hear from him. And you know, it kind of looks a little stark right now, but everything has to grow in. So and we'll talk more about this later.
Okay, great. Anybody else have anything to add?
I have a quick announcement from Loma Vista School Garden.
Sure.
This Saturday between 9 and 11, people from Midtown Community Council and Surfrider will be maintaining our native plant garden. If you'd like to come help anytime between 9 and 11, even if it's for half an hour, actually 9 to 11:30, please come for a little while. You'll learn a lot about native plants and it's very therapeutic. Corner of Loma Vista and Lynn Drive.
And the weather's gonna be great this weekend, Tree. So it's if you're out there early, you can break a sweat.
That's right.
So great. Any other community news or anything else that anybody wants to share? And just to let everybody know, it looks like Quinn and everybody has put up. They've got some email addresses and other things in the chat if you need to get it. If any of your friends missed tonight, we'll put up the recording of this hopefully tomorrow, if not by Saturday. And so I think that's it. It's a wrap. So thanks for attending tonight. And our next general meeting is set for August 12th. So thanks again. I appreciate it. And we'll see everybody next month.
Thank you.